Shirley with Spirit of Matter. And we are right now, it's not a Mercury day, but actually a sun night, moon hour. And what is more fitting in a sun night moon hour than to talk about eclipses? Ascendant is 6 degrees Gemini, conjuncting my Rahu, ruled by Mercury in 3 degrees Virgo. So Mercury is right now in the fourth house, and the moon is in 26 degrees Sagittarius in the seventh house, your broadcaster's midheaven, and it is ruled by Jupiter in 20 degrees Gemini, and opposing, releasing from opposition to this Jupiter. Midheaven, 18 degrees Aquarius, okay, so degree of poison, with Saturn retrograding Pisces, and the Sun releasing from an opposition to Saturn. So this is very alchemical sky of crisis and alchemy. A side note, I have been innerly debuting my Urano-Algol magic and I made a couple of things. What I used was the oil, and I noticed that I was in my moon days, a lot of hectic skies, and my nervous system was off the roof. I put a lot of things that were nourishing, and then after this, lots of things that were nourishing, I still needed something, and I put on that Urano Algol Moon in Taurus, fifth lunar mansion. Oil, and immediately it calmed my nervous system. The moon Uranus still gives something you need to set intention to, and with the Mars in Cancer, it's still kind of weird, but immediately it calmed my nervous system, and this is very related to our talk. And then I understood there's a lot of people around me, a lot of energies around me that kind of like looking at this, wanting that, both before I did it and after I did that. And I'm like, okay, that's very experimental. Uranus is conjuncting Algol once in 84 years. We're going to have the Uranus direct for the final shot to make talismans. Mine was, like I said, very fated ones. It was obvious. It was at least 3 year preparation for me doing talismans. Algol was the very first talisman that I did. I do not recommend you to start with Algol's very first talisman. It's not rocket science, but you do need to have her not on the minima, and you do need to make sure that the sky is ripe and that Venus is okay to do that. So that's something that was on. And it's very relevant for the shifting times that we are having fiscally. Okay, so it's too early to say exactly what it does. But I noticed that when I put that, it could be the oils themselves, because I used a tremendous amount of really calming oils, but it can also be the talisman itself that is giving this calming eureka. So I wasn't expecting that to be calming my nervous system the way it did. And I literally put nearly every talisman that I had to nourish, particularly my hair and my scalp, which is interesting. Um, and every time another part of my body gets really nourished, so the skin or the feet and so on. But it was particularly my hair and my scalp that was getting the nourishment this time. And yet when I used the Urano Algol, that completely like shifted. It calmed me down in a way that the rest of the stuff was not managing to do, including like the really potent stuff that you would use in astrology. So that's just something to pay attention to, and I'll keep reporting when I have it. Again, it's a once in 84 years talisman, and I understand that. Um, I understand all eyes on it are for a reason. I'm very likely not the only one who made such talisman, um, and even in such fashion. I do recommend you honey as well. Okay, it is something with honey, but I do recommend you to do honey for the outer planets. It's both something you can blend, and it is something that lasts pretty much forever. And it's important. Okay, most of us will not live to see the results of our talismanic work when it's stuff like Aries, like Uranus, like Pluto, and it's important to leave a mark. Okay, that's exactly the kind of stuff that 300 years from now somebody will find this honey or that honey. It's like, wonder what it does. Okay, so that's a side note. And I want to talk about the eclipse in Pisces and the in 18 September, and the eclipse in Libra, right? Solar eclipse in Libra in 2nd October. That in a context where I haven't discussed it before, because I talked about eclipses, I talked about the Pisces eclipse in length, but this is a context that kind of arrived to me. I'll discuss a couple of things. First of all, it's the last eclipses we're going to have with Pluto still in Capricorn. November 19, Pluto enters for real, into Aquarius, and that's it. Now, while when we talk about retrograde planets, the first strike of the planet, the direct movement of a planet, is usually the most important one. When we talk about an ingress, then it's actually the final ingress that brings in that permanent change. So if you talk about the planet going back and forth as a retrograde, the first strike is going to be the most striking one when we're talking about the planet ingressing. Okay, so retrograde, but then ingressing, then the ingress does stand a big mark. So this is for people like me or Pluto squares in 0 degree Scorpio, for people who are having the Pluto trine, okay, from 0 degree Libra, and for generally people kind of looking for omens around this Pluto ingress to Aquarius, then, or having personal planets there, then yes, it's true that the first pass is important, um, but it's upon the final ingress that we have a main event that contributes to that. Okay, so Pluto will be squaring, will be, I'm sorry, um, sextiling, okay, the lunar eclipse in Pisces, sextiling and trining, and that is of major significance. This is the last eclipse of Pluto Capricorn, the last two eclipses of Pluto Capricorn. And then the lunar eclipse in Pisces is already the first of the bisextile eclipses. And the bisextile eclipses will accompany us for a while because Pluto, Neptune, and Uranus are going to form a pre-sextile, which they are already perfecting. Okay, it's going to be perfecting 2026, but it's already in action and you can already tap into it. Okay, so when you talk about capturing the bisextile in a talisman, I would highly recommend you to do both things if possible. Is to capture Pluto, capture Neptune, capture Uranus separately, and then to blend it in. So you can use like my most preferred method would be honey, because honey is lasting forever. Um, but you can do kind of like a Caitlin Koppock style, which is blending the things, okay, which I would recommend you to if you do oil, then pick an oil like jojoba oil, which is long lasting, and preserve it well, And then from the oil, you can build whatever body cream, hair serums, stuff like that you can use. When it comes to consecrating a talisman, so you can do first, you can do that. If you have a Neptune in Pisces or a Neptune Aries, which will take a while to separate from Saturn, but still a Pluto Capricorn, um, or a Pluto Aquarius, uh, that would be appropriate, and then a Uranus um, in Taurus or Uranus in Gemini. Watch for the Uranus in Gemini's conjuncting Sedna. So unless you really know how to work with Sedna and you've been reverencing Sedna for a while, I would not, like, I would be cautious. Not to say I would not recommend it, but I would be cautious. Kind of like you're gonna do Neptune with Saturn in, then that's the equivalent of doing Uranus with Sedna, but Sedna is also an outer planet. Um, so that's for the capturing of the B sextile. Another thing that you can do, if you can get all these planets direct and form the B sextile, you want to watch for the moon. Okay, what do you want the moon to conjunct in the B sextile is going to change that. We're going to have a couple of goals with the B sextile that's very useful to capture in a talisman. Please, please, please use honey, use salt, use something that is going to be preserved and something you can blend one into another, then you can be capturing the B sextile, because this is a once in a millennia, okay, or couple of millennia. This is a very, very potent time, highly protective, and and again, it's a pioneering type of talismanic work. It's something that is very difficult, yes, to recreate. I would not be concerned about, stuff like mundane stuff, like this is going to be my legacy, this is going to be this, this is going to be that, because this is just something that is a couple of centuries old, and probably we will be on other planets. So it's just, just think practically. But the reason you're doing that is because we are capturing a time capsule that is quite significant and quite irreplicable for quite some millennia. So that is why I would aim to capture the bisextile. And I also say that out loud because it's not just like, the many people are going to attempt at that. Not all of us are going to do that. It's not perfected for all of us to do that. And the more the merrier. Okay, it's okay, it's very, very rare. Not in terms of impact necessarily, but in terms of rarity. And I guess that's why a lot of the eyes were on the urine algal and the fifth urine algal that I did. Still too early to say what it does, but I will keep reporting. Those of you who want to kind of get a hold of that, it would necessitate that you do things in favor of issues of alcohol. Okay, so I would really need to see support. Um, it can be anything from people who deal with addiction, women rights, LGBTQ rights, protection from financial violence, protection during turbulent time, okay, providing a soil, okay, a place to stay, safe places, like really stuff that tells me that you're setting a goal for this talisman, um, and that you desire it. I will give it randomly to people, but it is, it is very unique. It is very experimental, and of course, keep it astrology free. Okay, keep all these things that are like certification and this and that. Like, no, no, that's this should be supporting of the people that do not get to have their voice heard and do not get to be believed. Um, and that's okay. It should be supporting us to basically avoid a 1939 disaster by the awakening of the people. Okay, so that is the way I see it right now. And naturally, okay, all material has kind of like a limited thing, and that's relevant, okay, for the oil. Um, for the honey, I haven't made a large quantity of that, so if I would do larger quantity, that would be okay relevant. Um, so it's not about like a talisman that is for sale. It's about really changing what needs to be changed and tending to what needs to be tended to on a Uranus level, but also on a better per se level. Um, and if you're tending to do that and you want to get ideas for that, then the talisman could be useful, and that would be good enough a reason for me to do this. So yeah, let's begin to unfold what I just said, okay, about the eclipses. First is last eclipses with Pluto. And last eclipses with Pluto Capricorn means that the fated events that are to do with shifting perspective on anything Pluto Capricorn, and now Saturn is in Pisces. So this is both standardization of astrology and the healing profession, including what people call CAM, okay? Um, now, complementary and alternative medicine, medicines in general, psychiatry, psychology, um, marine studies, uh, the sailing in ships. Okay, I just saw two things. Two things. One was Elon Musk sent some billionaire to I think it is to Mars. We'll see what will happen with this. So if we had with Saturn Pisces, the first decan of Pisces, then we had something going deep into the ocean, and that didn't work out so well. But now we have something going far, far, far away into the sky, and we know Musk has round Mars in Aquarius in his eighth house. So that's also to do with occult, and he's actually not a bad astrologer. He's working with very good astrologers. Um, Much attention to Algol needs to be paid, and many people work with Algol right now for various reasons and in various ways. Um, and then again, the light carries more ease. Okay, just think about when you don't have to lie versus when you have to lie. When you don't have to lie, it's easier, it's flowy. We have to lie, it's sometimes you have to lie, but it's you know what I'm saying. It's charged with energy that can backfire way more than when you don't have to lie. And this is where you work with the planet and you genuinely give the charity and you genuinely set the intention, and that carries okay the force, um, power of intention. So lunar eclipse in Pisces carries that timestamp of the last eclipse that's really, really, really involving Pluto very strongly, but in a very relatively harmonious way to what we've seen. And we're going to be shifting perspective on anything Pluto Capricorn when Saturn is going to pay the emphasis on the middle phase of Pisces. And um, this is how we begin to tie in debt, taxation, insurances, okay, banking, okay, the bully colies with the what we call a big pharma, but also astrology and the fact that we have digital currency on our goal is that is okay, kind of like the Soros coin is big. Um, and and that is going to really give us the final insight, okay, of what's going on, what are we purging, what has been changed from the core here, and perhaps what to do about it. Okay, it's a tremendous ending of something, and lunar eclipses affected the people. Mars is going to be in Cancer, so well, I have already talked about the connection to well, the connection between Wef and Hu is going to be apparent, but also the hidden is going to be a bit more visible. It's going to affect the people. Um, 18 degree midheaven as I'm looking at this, and also kind of hearing some of my colleagues still need to listen to Victor, but listening to Gracia Tasio, that the lunar eclipse will be affecting Europe. I want to bring our attention to another thing. So, in the past 3, 4 years, in the past 5 years or 10 years, even, and I'm gonna even go back all the way to the Me Too, okay? I have been key witness, actually, to both the 2017 Me Too, to um, the outbreak of war in Ukraine. Okay, I was in between houses in the Netherlands before the war in Ukraine. Was already in Israel when the war in Ukraine happened. Still in shelters, but already in Israel. Not really shelters. It's not housing. Okay, and I was in Israel at the break of 7th October, and I was also in Israel during the Pfizer eclipses. Okay, during the COVID eclipses, all of them preceded certain events where I would become prepared. So by the time that the event happened, I was already way more centered. So by the time Me Too happened, it was already after Sugar Free Lemonade. It was already after burst of posts and stuff that are talking about the cult, basically, um, more so than sexual harassment. And by the time the Me Too happened, I was like, my God, okay, was I ready to process this? Because that was already the culmination. By the time COVID happened, it was already where I left my psychologist. To then I was kind of like Alice in Wonderland, MK Ultra, the type of treatment back then, even. Um, and and it was easier for me to see what's going on with the Pfizer shots, um, and to see the women around me, okay, kind of reacting to that, getting direct no or so on and so forth. I learned aromatherapy, so for me, I did took the 2 shots. There was a baby next to our neighbor had a baby, and I wasn't risking that. Um, but then the oils very likely assisted. Okay, it did affect my menstrual cycle for a while, but the oils very likely assisted in evacuating that drama from my body. I don't know for sure, so it's not like I'm selling you essential oils or anything like that. But that's something that could be the reason that I would go through this, is basically because I had a little antidote. Um, and also I would have to get on a plane, which would necessitate for me to get vaccinated, because then I would fly to Netherlands before the Ukraine war. I have to admit, before the first lockdown in COVID, me and my ex bestie were um, meeting my neighbor. She said that they might be having a lockdown, so we said, okay, we must have a sushi, and we went sushiing. Um, and I received something about Singapore, and so yeah, I don't know why. Um, and then we went sushiing, and then we came back, and indeed it was the first lockdown, and the entire country looked like North Korea. So that was the thing, and I already saw like the what's happening there. So how this all amasses to, well, now the people that held the point of charisma in person are not so close. Okay, they have to do it through Zoom. Okay. Um, uh, Same with therapy, by the way. Um, and and the shifting of powers of society. When I was in Netherlands, I really saw the wars. Okay, I really saw, like, I was told that people would rather like not have papers or passports or stuff like that, and I was like, but that's like with so dangerous, and with the human trafficking, with the this and with the that. Um, but then you're also invisible to the government. So this is not a prescription. I'm still processing. Okay, what I saw the first night in Amsterdam, that I was walking the street and didn't find a shelter. Um, then that's kind of like, this is what I received. And I was told there are going to be a lot of refugees and a lot of this and a lot of that, and that's just what I saw. And then when I came back, the war in Ukraine broke. Um, and funnily enough, a lot of the refugees were put in big ships. Okay, Southern Pisces. Um, and then before 7th of October, it was massive. I felt that after Saturn being in my 12th house for so long during the squaring with Uranus, I felt that it's very difficult for me to bridge the gap with society. Um, and I felt that the extent to which I was excluded from society, because not having housing, not being able to work because I just went through intense trauma, and how society is so unprepared for. I was literally a couple of days or even a day before the war with outrage saying something about people being in mass graves, dying like flies. And it wasn't like I was wishing that upon people. I was just very, very angry. And then the next day, or the day after, we woke up to the missiles and so on. So, um, but then I would finally get my credit card sent to my home, which I couldn't get, okay, because I would need the address in the government, which I ran away. And it kind of builds up to see how all the events that I've been through have set me up to be continuing on living for however much I'm supposed to continue on living. Because in COVID, okay, I left someone who was my best friend went through an internal crisis, it exploded over me. And I don't judge him, but I ran away, which means that I haven't changed my address. Yeah. And then I was in between houses. I was exposed to what I was exposed. And so stuff were really preparing me to be in a situation where, like, if I don't renew my ID, I don't have government papers. So that's just kind of like, whoa, okay. I'm not saying that's in any way, you know, it's not a prescription. I'm not saying even that that's what I'll do. It's just like, just paying attention, just observing how one thing led to another. And so, what I have to say to you is that I want you to try and pay attention. Who are the people who are getting pissed? That it looks like they're going through something. You might even think they went nuts before the big events, because once the big events, big eventing, you will think back of them. And those are the people for whom the world was not working before those big events. Okay? 2017, when I went, when I was going from the torment and trauma that I felt around workplaces and my sovereignty and autonomy, sexually, financially, psychologically, while working, yes, and in jobs, okay, and even in great jobs. And so went to rehabilitation, which means studies, and then I go to the next degree, trying to somehow squeeze in so I could go to the third degree, and then something like this happens. The world was really not working for me before 2017. It was really not working for me. Not being understood when I was in between houses, and I couldn't get a job because I left a violent situation that needs housing first and recovery. When you recruit employees and somebody tells you, yeah, I just left my violent husband, I just left my violent wife, oh, I lived 10 years with someone who was my best friend, and one sudden day he bursted on me because he was psychically attacked, and then he started psychically attacking me. Would you hire them? Would you say, come work with us? You'll probably be a great employee. You're gonna have to explode every day, sleep for 3 nights, and then we call you, we think you're missing, not be able to get from the chair to the bathroom, have to brush your teeth in 3 different segments throughout the day. Like, you're gonna be a fantastic employee. Okay, you just think logically. And then the war in Ukraine. Or when you think, how come when a person escapes violence, okay, which is usually also financial violence, and then they need their renewed credit card to be sent to their new address without changing the identification, which could be hackable, okay? And also, when somebody tries to get a job, but every time something happens, okay, one time there is abuse, one time there is this, one time the company asks you to run a financial fraud on people. And how do you explain that to people? After 7th October, the third or fourth time that the bank teller asked me, well, do you want to have a credit card by us and so on, a direct card, okay, not even credit, the debit card. And I was like, yeah, but you don't send it to me. She's like, no, that changed now. And then somebody saw that I'm pulling my last 20 shekels. She was like, started speaking to me and saw if he has like money having so that I can have until the next month. And we talked a little bit about choices, and I told him, every time I try to work, something happens. And that I didn't he got it because there was COVID, and then there was a war in Ukraine, and then it was 7th October. So he didn't even ask questions. And I was like, Okay, and now we are having a major eclipse in Europe, major eclipse in Europe. I talked about the possibility of mandatory army service. Definitely, it's very likely to involve medical warfare. I really am so grateful. Um, it's not in my place to say proud, but definitely grateful for people like Ladoncher, or people like Crasia Tasio, that really downright say it. They're going to try and sell us the idea that we have another pandemic. We don't buy into that. Um, and I've seen colleagues of mine being targeted that they couldn't even say they're targeted, and I don't even know if they knew. And some of them had been living with people that had immune system challenged immune system. You should think about the cruelty. Because with COVID can be a sneeze, but when you're actually targeted, it's not a sneeze. So water expands upon cooling is entirely inspired not only by Peter Artefries, who was himself targeted, not by Mokro to Cranbridge. No. Because the reason why his son is still in far away, she's not totally separated from okay, from that family. But this okay, like they may unaccustomed, but they did not untachi completely, and so um, you want to think about Deming, you want to think about the Supreme Court, you want to think about WHO and the global intelligence. That's just more like it, and that is more the reasoning and the maneuvers that were being done. And the other was the astrologer, assassinated astrologer Nicholas Stoyanovich, who had 18th degree in his chart, which is degree of poison. And he gave us the teaching of the 18th degree, the degree theory. He had the 18th degree, the 11th degree, the 22nd degree of to kill and be killed, which would expose that the chart of the WHO have at least 3 planets, including Neptune, on the lethal degree of mass murder. And Neptune on degree of 22 means mass murder through virus, pandemic, and this is intentional killing. Okay? And then we see Nicholas Stoyanovich suddenly died of COVID one sudden day. So when Uranus was degree 22 Taurus, on my lot of spirit, I did Water Expands Upon Cooling Season 1 that paid tribute to the work of Peter R. de Vries. And I know that this is a controversial issue. Um, and I hold the space for that, and for Nikola Stoyanovich, which was assassinated astrologer. Talked about the 22nd degree. Okay, so before we get all ecliptic, I want us to remember what's been going on. Who are the people for whom the world as it is not working, and they are not the villain? Okay, just the villains couldn't pull this through. Couldn't pull this through. Just the villains couldn't pull this through. Let's talk about Deming. Let's talk about Joris Deming. Joris Deming was Supreme Court judge in Netherlands, and like many people in his position, allegedly sent people like Babysin to jail. They were drug cartellers to lords to jail for murder and offenses to do with children. Now, this is because there is a criminal code that says you can't hurt women, you can't hurt children, although we know drug cartels, unfortunately, are still hurting. It's like that's what you do with some of the drugs, not all of them. Although drugs are also useful for people who have CPTSD, like MDMA and even amphetamines. So A lot of my recovery was thanks to prescribed amphetamines. So for me, it was prescribed. If people don't have access to prescribed, that's also something to remember. It's not just crushed cocaine, which also people use to tackle stress. I'm not saying it's good, but that's what people use it for. And I've seen people who sniff cocaine, okay? So we basically have a person that get the drug cartel lord to serve in jail, so that they would be tackling all the criminals and what they do to people who are accused of pedophilia, accused of hurting women, and so on. Now, the judges themselves, because of the positions that they hold in the global intelligence, which what you as the aka secret society, then they need to be extortable. And in order to be extortable, they have to provide snuff films. They had to provide films on tape committing sexual offenses. That's on tape, okay? Had to. And some of them are born into this quote, okay? Some of them are born into death camps, basically, um, that are the expendable children projects, and those that are destined to survive it um, basically become a decision makers hidden and visible. So unless it's rare cases like people that joined that cult um, for whichever reason and didn't know how far it goes, and they are not the inbred, but they joined from outside, and so they are um, they still go through torture if they want to get out, unless they sign with blood. But it's the case where people are not born into the cult. So, so that too, okay, is something that we're talking about. And from this perspective, that judge, um, what he was doing in Netherlands, he was basically promoting housing to people who have addiction to hard drugs. So he was promoting legalization of hard drugs. Later, Peter R. de Vries would have a political party that says, okay, the war on drugs is it's done, and so on. It's controversial, has pros and cons. Um, so the positive thing that was happening is that people began to be less discriminated against when they need housing, okay? Because if a person doesn't have housing, they cannot recover from addiction. And Baby Sin, Hussein Baby Sin, was a client of that Joris Deming, okay, before he was sent to jail. And that tells us that what the situation became is that the pro was that we began to acknowledge the fact that people that have addictions to hard drugs use them for to cope with stress, and they should not be criminalized and they should not be discriminated against when they want housing, or however problematic and so on and so forth, especially when they have to steal things in order to get it. So the decriminalization of hard drugs was something he promoted, especially when it relates to public housing and assistance, not to be in the streets. So that's not a bad thing. On the other hand, he had to do his snuff films allegedly. Okay, Handsome Adma would not be in Spain right now. If okay, I believe Handsome Adma. Um, but the thing is that the challenge is that if you weren't either on psychiatric drugs or um, just drugs, okay, so that you buy from drug cartel, you would not get housing. And so, or refugee, okay, because the refugees took precedence. Um, and so that creates a lot of drama where people say, hey, I don't, what I grateful for the privilege that they don't have to use either this or that. And sometimes that privilege is because you fought for your sovereignty. Open dialogue was an approach that was developed first in Netherlands before it was practiced in Finland's together with Housing First was developed in United States. This is going to be key information for you for the lunar eclipse in Pisces, which pertains to housing, dissolution of housing, refugees, psychiatry, drugs and drug cartels, taxation, financial crisis, mandatory army service, global pandemic, or medical welfare. And this is going to be key information you're going to need to know, okay? Because if you're, I said what I said, it's going to be the eclipse that people are going to call the mass psychosis eclipse. Rahu is relatively close to Neptune. Um, and Rahu and Neptune is giving mass psychosis. Okay, this is giving. But if you don't know that even psychosis or schizophrenia is curated by having housing independent of your ability to work for unlimited time, as practiced in Finland, okay, because housing first was suggested first in the United States, it was practiced in Finland, along with open dialogue was developed in Netherlands, but practiced in Finland, okay, it means that you believe the person, because mostly those crazy people, they are just sensing what's going to happen, okay, which tell you why they are political prisoners, essentially. You have to go through you have to go through kind of like if you enter the sea, then you know you after the first waves you can swim, and the first waves with people who have supposedly schizophrenia is where you need to understand the language. The language is really outer worldly. Okay, it's like first testimony of a person who told me, you're sending knives to me, you're sending needles to me. And he said, well, the feminists, they accused me of things I didn't do. And I was like, yeah, I was pissed at, I was Me Too. I was writing an email regarding a Me Too case. And that person was a male. So he received my rage, uh, uh, at, at, not only at men, but he received my rage, my feminist rage, as needles sent into him. And it's like, hey, I didn't do it, okay? So we have to go through that hoop. It's like he was not imagining, he was feeling something very real. Just my emotion felt like needles, and he was trying to interpret that. And also because he told me that he had a girlfriend that accused him of, I think, something to do with Me Too stuff. Internally, that unnerved me. So he was absolutely telling the truth. You have to be very honest with yourself when you're dealing with someone who supposedly has psychosis, because they're not imagining, and you need to be open to be radically honest with yourself and the other about what you feel, what you think, um, how that could be felt or interpreted. You don't want to gaslight not yourself and not the other. And then the person basically is getting validation. When the environment is supportive, then those intrusive stuff become channelings. They become supportive voices, supportive sensations. Um, and that's basically the key to psychosis. The most challenging of human diseases. So housing first, would a person have root that they can ground, being believed, being listened to, being believed, having their sovereignty respected, and they become just, either they become channelers, just become a person that lives, and then they discover what they like to do with themselves. And when that comes from them, they heal from schizophrenia. No medical intervention in the sense of drugs. If you don't know that, this eclipse is going to throw you off the roof, okay? Quite literally, even. With the B sextile, with Uranus. But if you do know that, nobody can have the psychiatric card on you and manage to shake you from within because you know that even if you supposedly are psychotic, A, you're not imagining, and you need a supportive environment where you have a safe housing, independent of your ability to work, are believed, and your sovereignty respected. What I just gave you could be the key to your freedom. But definitely, it is the key to your freedom internally, into to your inner sovereignty, because all of these pseudoscience, and this is intended pseudoscience, is is meant to take your sovereignty. So this is for the lunar eclipse in Pisces, what is so important for you to understand. It's the last eclipse with Pluto in Capricorn. One final shift of perspective, and we are in the shade of the eclipse. It's very likely, if you're listening to me, that this is this is your this is your this is your point drops. Okay, it's very likely that's the thing. That's the thing you needed to hear right now. That's the power you got by listening to me that you wouldn't have had you been persisting in the they are crazy, which would inevitably put you through susceptibility to be shaken, to be decentered, to believe things that are wrong about yourself, so self-stigma, internalized offenders, basically. Um, and what you should be asking yourself is, who are the people for whom that didn't work? Who are the people for whom the world as it is today, because we're going to have a big event in Europe, who are the people for whom the world as it is today didn't work? Okay? And this is one giant question. It's also the first of eclipses of the bisextile, which points in Neptune in Pisces, still retrograde, but it also points in Uranus. So Neptune has been in Pisces since 2012. People have been talking about it as the Great Shift, and about that year as the Great Shift. I don't know if it was just Neptune. So I'm talking tropical, okay? Because sidereally it just entered Pisces, and I did feel it. So both are very useful perspective to check. I know I quote Crassia Tassio a lot, but this is tropical astrology. Crassia is doing sidereal. So Neptune, you want to think about since 2012. You also want to think about like a couple of 100 years ago when Neptune was last here. Um, so we are at the culminating of Neptune in Pisces. It's not the last eclipse of Neptune in Pisces, I think. It's not two eclipses on the last Neptune in Pisces, but it's still in the culmination level of Neptune Pisces. That would probably bring another Neptune video. I'm having a lot of Neptune. So we're going to shift our perspective around not only Pluto, not only Pisces, not only Virgo, where the sun is, but also Neptune itself, what the nature of Neptune, how to work with Neptune, okay? Those who are during the Neptune squares, we're going to have a lot of Neptune points dropping. And Neptune is a fascinating planet. Then the other planet of the bisextile is Uranus, and Uranus is sitting pretty with Algo, with Beta Persei. So I just discovered that Adolf Hitler's sun was with Beta Persei, which I didn't know. I thought it was like beginning Taurus. So I don't know if that information is right or at a point on, because I thought Hitler had sun in the eighth house, but he didn't have sun Beta Persei, I think. But if that's right, I knew a person that had sun on Beta Persei. And they were actually reading from my Kampf. Okay, nothing. This not praising Hitler. They were actually trying to demote Hitler, but that was very fascinating. Okay, um, so that's just kind of stuff that came up. Okay, right before this eclipse, and it is um, already in action with eclipses by the merit of the bisextile. Okay, so because the lunar eclipse is conjuncting Neptune with Rahu, not too far from Neptune. Okay, it's not a 3-degree orb, it's not tight, it's not this, but it's already there. Um, and that triggers the bisextile. So that triggers the first of eclipses where the bisextile is going to be very potent, very strong. Rahu is not in Taurus, Ketu is not in Taurus. We've been through those, but now we have another activation from the last phase of Pisces, and then we're going to have the nodes on the last phase of Pisces all activating this bisextile. That's the time where Uranus repeats the cycle where it was between 1939 to 1941. Okay, so who are the people for whom the world was not working before the Second World War? Well, one thing that happened is women got the right to vote afterwards. Women got the right to have a bank account afterwards. Okay, if you're talking about divorces, that's something to keep in mind. But those were things that were not working. And you say, okay, well, Jews had Israel, which has Samuel Gol, and now it's being revisited. It's being revisited. Those solutions are being revisited. Okay, um, both about what our financial system is standing on, the satanic ritual abuse currently, and and about what we weren't told about the foundation of Israel. That again has to do with the funding, or has to do with banking, so it's not exempt from satanic ritual abuse either. It's not the head of Satan necessarily, as people make of it, but it's definitely not exempt from that. And people have all eyes on Israelis getting free healthcare system, but what they don't have all eyes on is like Israel was the rat lab of Pfizer. So, okay, it's kind of reminding me of the essay that I wrote about the colonialism and psychiatry. People in Great Britain were idealizing the psychiatric hospitals that were built in by the company of the India, uh, the colonialism in India. Okay, and what was actually taking place there was political imprisonment, and that was used to create a national identity around the back then invented science of psychiatry. And from a vantage point of a philosopher of science, I found it fascinating because up until then I learned about Kuhn, which was like, oh, data gathers up, and then we have a revolution in science. And I was like, oh, here we have complete opposite. We have an image of a science. And if you think it's just psychiatry, what is M theory? What does the M stand for? Okay, cult-like sciences will be cult-like sciences, and we are introduced. Okay, what is the thing that you know? What you brush your teeth with? Okay, when Feynman said it, I was like, what does he want from the brushing teeth? Brushing teeth? It's like, nobody want to listen to my other videos on that. Um, and that pertains to the A bombs. Okay, the A bombs used a lot of toxins, used a little fluoride as well. And then when they were dropped, then we didn't need that anymore. So we started putting it in the food, in the soil. It was everywhere. It was a byproduct of the Industrial Revolution. We're now having the fourth Industrial Revolution. Okay? And so much there is. It's not just the fluoride being put anywhere. It's also the byproducts of, like, have you wondered, Elon Musk has Tesla cars and he has Tesla energy, okay, which is fully solar battery. When I was in Amsterdam, they have Lightyear 1, which is a fully powered, fully powered solar car. Just don't want to bother my neighbors too much. Let's take a walk. And so they made a fully powered solar car in not the sunniest place on earth, which is the Netherlands. And so why, and all my love to Elon, why do I see the Teslas kind of like with the needle connected to the gemeente electricity charge? And even Tesla could put up a fight with Lightyear 1, which, by the way, does not have an X page. I tried to tag them because Elon has a fully powered solar battery. And so it's just like, what the fuck? And even more than that, you had a Volvo. And I remember that the Volvo had a kind of like a hybrid solar roof. And then in Sweden, you put the solar car in the electricity cable. Oh no, it's electric cars. So Volvo is electric car. You put the electric car in the electricity cable, which is solar powered. What has more surface that touches the sun? The roof of a Volvo or the electric charge? So if the electric charge powers the sun, so you could literally have one of these Madame cars that you usually like the cars you sell for children, and put the solar thingy there, and it will power a full Volvo, because the ratio between that electricity cable that you put a solar roof in Sweden, mind you, that powers a Volvo charging. Then you want to tell me, yeah, it's easier with the van because it's easier. No. That's not what's on. So, okay. And the Swedes had a hunger strike for Elon to fix his Teslas. It was something that was wrong with the Teslas. And it was like, Elon would do it. We, the people, could buy it. Lightyear 1 did it. Why are we still with the needle to the electricity? You're gonna want to think about those people for whom the world as it is right now doesn't work. Electricity car is great for the city. But if you have a solar car, fully powered solar car in Netherlands, and the fully powered solar charger for a Volvo, mind you, in Sweden, then you don't even need to live in Qatar to have solar energy. And the panel length for the exposure of the sun, like we've been duped. What could you do with a fully powered solar car that can travel anywhere indefinite? And Elon has these fully bulletproof cars, like the pyramid car. Have you seen them? The pyramid cars? They could go to Mars. You literally do everything. So for whom the world as it is not working. All this weird shit that we see in one answer is already immediate. It's the children. Because if you see a child in the street, your paternal or maternal instinct kicks in, and you don't see who that child belongs to, immediately you want to call the cops so that they will call the welfare. Good morning, you have been recruited a child to organ trade or child trafficking. And so the people that are homeless would evade people and definitely not ask for help. It was literally a police car ran away from me. I managed to scare a police. I just walked towards them, and then they knew I'm going to ask for help, and so they ran away from me. And I literally had a police person saying to me, the help that we give you don't want. Prior to 7th October, we basically evacuated whole cities and put them in 5-star hotels in the Dead Sea. This is not a luxury, okay? Okay? It's an entire family gets a room. It's not like you don't want to go there, and that's your only place. So for months. So okay, it's not really a vacay, but a social worker tells me, well, I don't have a 5-star hotel, but I tell her your shelters are not safe. Not that she had one. Well, you did have 5-star hotels for 7th October. Those are the things you want to pay attention to. Who are the people for whom the world as it is right now not working? Right now, you want to take a look at especially the refugees that are being told the stuff about work, stuff about, okay, like, how do you expect a person who's scared to work to work? And what type of work would you think they would do? Okay, wake up from your delulu. Wake up from your delulu. The people that are political prisoners, the people that are being put in hospitals, in this and that either nobody hears about and nobody knows, or they're being forced on drugs, which has nothing to do with psychiatry. And never have been. Pyramidal or extra pyramidal side effects. The pyramid, we all know what the pyramid is. And that's your insurance, that's your boly-coly. What do you think is going to happen to the safest of safe investments that you hold? The boly-colies are going down. If you haven't figured it already, We've been prepared since 2008. We've been informed since 2012. They do not cover your feet therapy. I don't just mean reflexology. They do not fucking cover your pedicure, your teeth treatment. And if they do, not holistically. And if they did, all your bully collies would not be. That's the core of common man's economy, is life insurance and bully collies, which all your insurances, they're invested in bonds that you're being marketed that are A credit loaners. Your A credit loaner is a person that goes verrückt on every other Saturday, drink stuff you'll never know, have a cocktail of drugs you don't even want to hear of, and is running big companies and living on debt written on other people, which they call. And you're being marketed that this is an A credit loaner. So you invest in these governmental bonds. Now that bubble was working for some time, even a couple of centuries, in different forms, golden standard, royalty, yes. Well, that's your bully collies. And that's your bonds. The rest is warfare. Even what you're being told is cure for cancer. You know how many times they found a cure for cancer? We might find out this eclipse. Cancer, okay, Mars in Cancer. So why are people being put? Chemotherapy is torture. Needless. And I'm not saying that from, hug a tree and, and eat tofu, which may have GMOs, but I'm saying that from just classic medicine, offering classic solutions. There's just no torture, giving remission to terminally ill cancer patients. Budget stops at that point and people return to their deathbed and die. How much money did you allocate to contributing? Did you have a case where a new person in Netherlands that were helping my parents when they were married, and her husband died. They left her a small caravan and maybe some money, and the entire, I don't know how much money they had, which they had quite some, they donated to alleviating cancer, okay, to finding cure for cancer. That was before I was born. I'm 40. That was in Netherlands, by the way. So, can you imagine somebody, maybe you weren't like married, maybe like known in public. They pass away. And you're like, okay, at least one thing I don't have to worry. I lost my best friend. My one day I don't have to worry is financially. And then you're like, you have to live very simply. And you say, well, at least that's because they donated some huge, good grand goal, covering up and assassinating scientists who discovered cure for cancer. Harry, can you hear me? So, and that's been governing our decision of decisions. And also how we judge people when they made other decisions. Uranus Taurus with the entire bisextile on the lunar eclipse in Pisces is going to bring in those issues, but it's also protecting you. You tend to that, and it's also protecting you when you tap into the bisextile. So definitely shifting, deepening of perspective, waking up from a dream we've been living in. Okay, waking up from a dream. But the waking up from a dream and the understanding of how something is a movie being played out can be very centering once the events do occur. You can see it as resilience, you can see it as centering or whatnot. Okay? I can't tell you that it was easy to be in Israel in 7th of October. Fortunately, I wasn't in Gaza. That's the usual things, like missiles hit a house in the neighborhood. Fortunately, we are not in Gaza. People that you know got murdered in brutal way. Fortunately, we are not in Gaza. There is a risk that your entire village is going to be slaughtered. But fortunately, we're not in Gaza. And we can just keep going. And it's true, you cannot argue with that. But you also, if you heard about this woman survivor that she escaped to North Korea, you know how she's being used. Because the horrors of capitalism all amount to, well, thanks God we're not in North Korea. But that's also how they build up a North Korea. It's by comparison. Holocaust jokes insert here. Okay? So the good thing about this eclipse is it's very light, except for the conjunction of the moon Neptune, which is a hard aspect, it's going to be softened when we tap into the bisextile. Moon Neptune is particularly close to the point of disillusionment. And with Neptune, the disillusionment is from where we have escaped the situation, okay? Where we have been escaping something. The coping mechanism that we used expired. So Neptune governed that point of disillusionment. With the hard aspect, okay, with the sextile or the trine, it's actually where Neptune is helpful, where a little bit of either dissociation or a little bit of creation, music, movies, or even, something intoxicated, like having a glass of wine or something like that, that can be useful. With Moon Neptune, the point of disillusionment, the coping mechanism, its date has expired. But the moon is sextile in Pluto, which means we are emotionally more competent at tending to, okay, the power issue at hand and the hidden agenda or hidden structure at hand, and sextiling Uranus, which means there is a certain emotional, psychological eureka about the matter at heart, okay? Now, this Mars that's in Cancer, that's ruled by the moon, it's going to make its way towards the opposition to Pluto, which trines Neptune. So the power of storytelling becomes more and more potent, while evading direct conflict becomes less and less possible. I talked about what Mars is going to do. And one of the things that came up was it's definitely going to be the spring of nations, but boy, that winter is winter. You want to watch, like, you really want to watch my channel, because that's one of the key channels that kind of feel like if maybe they're not going to go viral, but definitely that's what the people who will be lucky enough to watch and be exposed to that content, that this is a channel that has been doing something that hardly any channels were doing, especially because it's not been so commercial. Okay, it's been doing something that no other was doing, especially because it was so isolated in the shadow band and not so commercial and not so, doing the things that you would normally do to get attention. Because if you go throughout all my series, whether it water expands upon cooling and astrological considerations for declarations of independence, you see how this prepares the coming times. So there's a lot to it, okay? And the fact that I'm an outer planet person tending to that which is intergenerational, there's just a lot to it. Even when I did my magic, it began with Beta per se. So very soon it turned to outer planet magic as well. So there is just something in here that's just not anywhere else. And if you kind of take a look at why was this coming up at this time, you see that it's all so relevant for the spirit of the times, and not just the broadcaster. Okay, there are episodes that are personal, and I call it when I say it, but this is very much a channel that is a part of the spirit of the times, more so than other who would need to pay emphasis on commercial, who would need to mind their words more so than I do, given the context. Who would have emphasis on, recruiting students or doing readings or stuff like that. That's still telling the tale, but they couldn't go as far. Okay, whether they have families, it's just you couldn't go as far as this channel could go. And so both declarations of independence, okay, astrological consideration for declarations of independence, water expands upon cooling, the leader series, okay, that I did, all of these things are just so, the outer planets, okay, all of these things are just so relevant to the spirit of the times and the context from which I'm coming from, the way to really lived, like I've really like a living tale through the story of the times. So there's just something about this that you really want to, go deeper. If you feel the calling to go deeper in, because that eclipse is kind of pointing to that. Okay, especially it's going to affect Europe. And then we're going to have the October eclipse. So let's just look for a little while at the October eclipse. Monthly. Let's go directly to October. And solar eclipse in Libra, 10 degrees Libra. With Ketu. And Lilith. I call it the Lilith eclipse. And I've talked about it extensively. Pluto still in Capricorn. It's not tightly aspecting anything here. Neptune is even closer to Rahu. So again, all that I said about the lunar eclipse still maintains, and Mars is still ruling Rahu, except that the moon is now in Libra. So this is where we are purging. Okay, the way people have defining war crimes. The thought about rape and war crimes and rape in war, especially with the Lilith eclipse, is going to be significant. I hope that people are understanding more and more that allowing rape in war, allowing the many slaughters and tortures like ritual sacrifice in war has been perpetuating war since the Inuit. If not when Uranus hits Sedna, they will. But it's going to be very difficult awakening when Saturn is with Neptune in Aries, the sign of sovereignty, and the connection to the sexual energy. Okay? Uranus, Sedna. So this is where definitely we are purging something to do with war crime trials, and the perspective is Lilith. So Lilith is very much about the war crimes, the rape as war crime. There is a ritual element to those, which may or may not emphasize itself. We are purging certain heuristics to do with sex offenses at court, the way the international arena views Lilith themes, equity to women, the ability of women to have like a bank account and so on. We are purging something. So, and with Mars in Cancer, there's this grand trine between Mars, Saturn, and Venus. There is a Venus Mercury on the 11th degree, and there is this 11th degree of Scorpio, which again brings us back to the loop of Mars. I have been talking a lot about the fact that also murder of the soul costs more lives. Okay, which is reference to a murder costs more life on the Purmerend murders, which I addressed extensively around the Memorial Day for Peter de Vries. And so in Netherlands, I'm half Dutch, and in Netherlands you have the ability to kill yourself assistedly, okay, as assisted suicide due to a mental crisis or mental health. It's extensively difficult, so much so that all triggers on a woman died of hunger, and they weren't sure if she died because she refused to eat or is because of doctors assisted her with suicide. And the majority of the cases of people who ask for assisted suicide on the grounds of mental difficulty is survivors of incest, sexual violence as children, and so on. So all the Bassa van der Kolk, okay, is and because of the Saturn in Pisces and Mars in Cancer with Venus in Scorpio, Venus Mercury in Scorpio is giving children committing suicide because they were so and so and so, and that is brought to the court, and the court can no longer, okay, now this is where you can expect a big world war. Why? Because again, we tend to the expandable children. If the evidence that people commit big suicide as a result, they couldn't anymore with the war crimes of rape. They couldn't anymore with being raped as a child. They couldn't anymore with incest. All the legal grounding that they tried to base towards 2030 was basically to legalize pedophilia is like a tower of cards. What happens in history when a tower of cards like that hits? A world war. So you want to be realistic about your expectations from this little eclipse. The bisextile is highly active by the merit of Ra conjoining Neptune. Is not a tight orb, so you can tap into the bisextile. Uranus is going to be retrograde on Algol Beta Persei, yet another. And Uranus is ruling suicide, but is also ruling electrocution, as well as the 11th degree that rules both suicide and electrocution and electricity. And Beta Persei also ruling electricity. You get the power of thunder. All of these things together point to massive eureka that all the ground on which we build that is trying to devalue the crime of rape, whether at war, towards children, towards women, or towards men, but I have to admit is less discussed here, is going completely forward. Okay, it's going completely bonkers. Gender affirming surgery can also be the point here. And so the importance of accessibility of such surgery versus the irreversibility is also going to be important. You might strike a little bit of eureka. What I'm more concerned about, because with gender affirming, what have already been washing, okay? But what I'm most concerned about is that because it's no longer possible to ignore the effects of sexual boundary violation, especially in children, especially as war crimes, and psychological, occultistic, okay, the spirit and in matter here, and the connection to what people say psychosis, connection to even people becoming perpetrators, but they don't care about it so much because that serves the agenda. But definitely the connection to like mental ailment, or a connection to spending money, how much it costs you, that the person is shaken from the core, so their monetary behavior is not to your expectations, okay? And it's not just addiction. Okay, a person who hasn't slept all night needs their morning coffee more so than another, and needs more coffees than another. A person doesn't have money to buy food, needs more coffee than others, that can tend to have addiction. Okay, all these things, and of what they entail. Okay, whether it's surgeries, whether it's beauty processes to cover up for things. There's like really a lot of stuff. Mass technology, okay, a lot of technology to hide the identity here, to hide the identity that, to move here, to move there, not being able to work yet again, okay, Uranus, and that, you know, all the notion of like sex workers or sex trafficking and all that, especially the connection between the supposed choice to be sex worker and past of incest or sexual trauma, okay? Whether it is, whether it isn't, whether it bifurcates, a lot of eurekas are going to go out that are no longer able to ignore that, and people are going to call out for something. Okay, Mars and Venus in good aspect with Saturn. So this is an action that has to do with protecting fertility in the face, of course, the child support. Okay, this is the kidnapping of children, even that. The fiscal challenges to have healthy relationships. Venus in Scorpio, okay, the connection between being obsessively jealous and having past of sexual trauma. We might change the way we think about Scorpio around this eclipse as well. And so what this Lilith eclipse does, it makes it no longer possible to ignore these interconnections and how both the lack of equity, because Lilith is very much the lack of equity between men and women, and its effect on entire humanity, religion, fiscal with Libra, even appearance, a bone structure, feet structure. The person who's aligning my own feet structure. Wow. From A-bombs to Chernobyl, I don't know what it's everything. To the invisibility, the connection to the spirit and matter connection. It's like, whoa. But here, because we're no longer able to ignore things, and it's en masse, okay? This eclipse involves the B sextile, and this eclipse involves the Beta Persei, and we're no longer able to, and Pluto is on the anaretic degree of Capricorn, still retrograde, but their last eclipse of Pluto in Capricorn, okay? Then what happens is that the entire foundation on which our essence of economy, and when I say economy, I don't just mean the groceries you buy in the supermarket or your affordable housing. I mean the wealth that owns royal families, the wealth that owns the earth, okay? All based on you're not reclaiming your sexual energy. Even if you're asexual, it's not about having sex with people. It's about your creative energy. This being harvested by ritual sacrifice, by moon cults that are not moon like worshipping the moon, but that are harvesting the power of the moon to attract, and the upbringing, the power of upbringing to create upbringing traumas, fertility traumas, labor traumas, conception traumas, and and when people, satanic ritual abuse survivors say, if people remember, because they get dissociated, then they will remember the pedophilia, which is a cover up. And you think, like, pedophilia cover up for what? That they fumble with the energy so that can be harvested ritualistically and the person can be controlled. Because what happens when you don't have safe housing first? You begin to be susceptible to psychosis or mind control. And what happens when people question your reality? You're becoming isolated. So now this can no longer be ignored. And usually what happens when people can no longer ignore, they can no longer say this didn't happen. One such event was in 1996 when the case for Marc Delcroix was exposed, and people really understood that, hey, this solitary man was not holding so many girls and committing sexual, raping them so many times. He's humanly incapable of doing that. Like, he would die from a heart. He would croak for, even if he took Viagra, he would croak, okay? And people could no longer ignore how the court suddenly made it on just this man and arrested him when he was kind of like the Andrew and Tristan Tate or the Epstein um, of the Peter ring that was all European, and people could no longer ignore that. So the people in the White March in Paris demanded for that to be further interrogated, with little did they know that the Supreme Court judge had to be in those rings as well. They had to be on tape committing rape and torture and murder. Otherwise, they cannot be extorted and they cannot be trusted. Because that's the trust that you put, the apartment that you want to hide from the government, and you want to have your grandchild inherit this apartment. So you say, you must put it somewhere, you must put it on the trust. That's the trust. And then what happened in 1996, a series of events that brought a surplus of people that were not born in Europe, but now had to immigrate. It also was the foundation of the Taliban. And Afghanistan is not the same. And so, if you know that, then you have a 4 on all of those who have no idea. I have to, okay, what happened just now? I'm in an open space, and I was pointing my hand. I was not noticing my movement, just like pointing my hand, and then I had to open my fingers immediately because I was straightening my hands. I was like, oh my God, that just looked like the Heil. But that's exactly what's happening. It was that. And we are at those times. And that's the little eclipse. And now we look at Paris again and how it plays out into 2024. Just recently, there was a case exposed of all triggers on again, of a woman that was drugged and raped for decades. She's 73 years old right now. Okay. And that happened on and off. Hospitals assisted that. 72 men were involved that we know of. They were involved in raping this woman as she was drugged and later needed surgeries. And then she decided to speak up. But she found out what happened to her. And so here we have not a death camp, okay, that we know of. People logging on a site that was known as without her knowledge and committing that. Okay, what do you think is going to happen? I'm going to point my hand again. That 2 generations of men died before women got the right to vote, to have a separate bank account. And practically for no reason, okay? Whether it's same-sex relation or male and female sex relation, people are happiest when they have intimate relations, orgasms. It's like we're designed to work in a particular way. It is not to rape each other and fight all day. You have no idea that as a person who's been tending to assassination prevention, to both of kind of like people who escape violence and so on, and then I tend to political assassination prevention, because I saw the trace of how journalists murdered, political leaders threatened, even women escaping violence, and very likely men as well, and children. It's like there's so much commonalities between these things, even occult wise. And I was just standing, okay, because if we get the thing that changes everything, then we can prevent for all of these things. But that's expandable children. Either the husband was involved, or somebody got targeted, or, okay, it's just for the private cases. Therefore, the more famous cases, if you help a state witness, what make it, like maybe you would talk about the Supreme Court, okay? If you supposedly betray a family, crime family that knows your family for so long, maybe you will betray the Supreme Court judge that's involved with these things. So you can't be trusted. We'll blame, the Mocro Mafia. Especially if you're beginning of your career, you tended to judges putting the wrong people on a murder of children. Okay? If you talk about Islam, and what bothers you about Islam is the way they treat women, child marriages, then even if people would consider it washing, even as a joke, if you tend to that, you're in 24/7 prison for 20 years. But if there's a picture of you with Marc Ducoin, you're good to go. You can ride a bike to your local church, regardless of how public your role in society. Okay? There is, granted that you grew up into satanic ritual abuse death camps and you're a survivor and you went through abuse yourself, which includes all the horrors, and how to perpetuate it as well. It's just a small line. So that's something to consider. And so when we understand that, we understand why the Lilith eclipse is kind of like, if we haven't gone through let's say, if the mandatory army recruitment doesn't happen by the lunar eclipse in Pisces for Europe, the Lilith eclipse will definitely do the job. And if we listen to Krasia Tasser, she said that the Lilith eclipse will also involve a lamb, which means Iran. It's not like we didn't know it. It's not like we didn't see it. It's not like we don't know what's coming. But that's just, okay, that's just those type of stuff. The stuffy stuff that happens. So what's better than to draw the attention to an ongoing world war than to address the fact that the entire pyramid that you've built upon being okay with interfering, harvesting the sexual boundaries of people and the traumas, the upbringing and relational traumas of people for ritual abuse, to control humanity, is falling into pieces because people begin to claim their power and begin to heal and begin to even know where is the road to healing. Those are the last eclipses with Pluto in Capricorn. They are happening with Saturn, the ruler of Pluto, in Pisces. And Jupiter in detriment, okay? Jupiter in Gemini. But again, what is detriment? It's just Jupiter tending to the children, tending to the trade in children, to the philosophy meets applied science. What is the gap between philosophy and applied science? Plenty dead scientists. And as a person who's been looking into, how do you study philosophy of science? You study the history of scientific revolutions. You're like, oh my God, Pluto's going to be in Aquarius. There's going to be scientific revolutions. You kind of like, that's when they, that's when they pop the kind of like the rabbit out of the hat. And it's like, oh, we just discovered that. No, you discovered that 3 centuries ago. And you're going to try and hide it and duck it. Okay, just duck it, tuck it back into the hat once you're done with whatever changes you want to make. But then there are the we the people part, which is like, how come so many people have cancer that didn't have it back then, and they're all treated with torture? Like it can, like with 2024, that's all the medicines we have, like for mental health, for cancer, for this, for that. No. But instead of bodies upon bodies of whistleblowers, we're going to be having bodies upon bodies of people who were logging on to without her knowledge. And so one thing you can know for certain is that the people who grew up into the cults where trust is based on snuff films of children, it's not like they can rely on anyone to save them. So if you think about what happened when we moved out of the gold standard, oh my God, I have an echo. When we moved out of the gold standard, we began to handshake our business deals, because that piece of paper that you transmit, be it a dollar, a check, or a piece of plastic, or the credit card, is nothing but the word of the handshake. Okay, there's pros and cons to that, but we began to handshake our business deals again. Common people, okay, not the people who are snuffing children for trust. And the system of extortion, first of all, became, on the one hand, the system of extortion became more commonplace. How do I ensure that you will pay the entire amount for this and that? Okay, well, one way is that we both pay protection to a lawyer. How will the lawyer ensure that, and that? Well, one way is to make sure that we divide our equity in equity so that we don't have the raison d'etre to invest in extortion, crime, fraud, and so on. And this is the beginning of the foundation of the welfare state. Okay, you're paying your taxes to ensure promptness. You're paying your taxes because you don't want the homeless down the street to be recruited to a house flipper that's going to put him in nice clothes, going to give him nice credit, going to give him nice papers, and then they live in for a week, and then you find your apartment completely ravished, that you better sell it because, and it's easy to recruit people. It's like, hey, you want a night out the street without having to sell your body, to commit a crime, to steal anything. This is what you do. How many of you took a loan to buy an estate that got flipped like that? That's what your taxes should go to. If you don't pay taxes, you must make sure that people will be housed. Who do you think they recruit to death cults? The suicide bombers. Or your spies. Okay? So again, the power to the people means that we, the people, need to at the very least tend to that, because our agreements, there is no amount of extortion, threat, torture, or I don't know what, that can ensure to you that you will be trusted. Okay? The more energy you invest in extortion, the more likely it is to fall like a tower of cards, because it's built on fear, and wealth is just not built on fear in general. One of the grandest wealth that we have is the weather. Okay, we can forest Sahara by building half moon, which is Sahar in Hebrew, um, and building it, crafting it into the ground so that there's a little bit of a tiny swamp, and the water that does come in, even the humidity level, the water that do come in, begin to nourish the soil until it grows naturally, forced again without planting a single seed. We did that in Sahara. Okay, I've started an experiment like that in my backyard. I will let you know. That's one of the greatest wealth that we have is oxygen, is shade, is the climate that we have. And we can tend to that with technology of the moon, by the way. Okay, it's the half moon. The half moon is when you work the soil. Full moon is where you harvest. And the first crescent moon, or what people call the new moon, which is the first crescent moon, is when you plant. I would carve the half moons with the half moon of the growing moon, okay? Because we want something to grow. And then to weed out for the half moon that is decreasing. So that's my Pluto square. So, and Uranus in Taurus. Okay, for that, there's no amount of extortion, fear, or threats that you can do to grow. Like, this is the energy you want to grow your forests with. You're going to breathe that oxygen. When my grandfather escaped whatever they had in Warsaw there, okay, so they ran out. The gate was open. There was a rebellion. The gates were open. He ran out, ran through Italy. He ran through the forests. When you build a forest, a house with the trees, you don't want to cut the trees, okay? And to avoid burning them as much as you can, because sometimes you need to, okay? But you don't want to cut the trees. You want to build the house with the trees, so it's more supportive of your nervous system. You become one with the nervous system of the trees. I cannot stress the benefits of that. There's something I was inspired to by actually a Dutch house builder, and became one of my basic settings for nervous system supportive housing. You could say it's a patent, but I much rather that to be available to all people, because that's true wealth. Okay, willing consent is one of the building blocks of wealth. if you're caught up with the division, then you get vacuumed in to the harvesting moon cults of the harvesting of your energy, the harvesting of your soul. But if you at least don't buy that, then you're already setting your intention in a way that is towards your sovereignty and towards true wealth, true well-being as well. And the B sextile here is very protective. What's going to assist you in the fluid? Well, what floats? Wood floats. Stone doesn't float. Climbing trees. If you have a house, you can build it up in the trees. Depending on the trees, I mean, a big flute's gonna knock over the trees, but wood floats. What do you use when there's a thunder? To not be electrocuted, okay? You take a log of wood, you hold it, and the wood blocks the electrocution. Okay, it takes in the power of the thunder. You save your life. In case of a nuclear bomb, that is not useful, however. What do you do to avoid nuclear bomb? Nuclear is the core of something. What is the core of something? You want something that's an infant on its cellular level inside the womb. If it's not well treated, that's when you have the spark. That's a change on a cellular level that grows exponentially and can grow into life or their destruction. The wonderful news is that Chiron is going to not be on the 22nd degree in the little eclipse. If we take it back to September, where we are now, then just a couple of days, okay, thank you, lunar eclipse in Pisces. Then Chiron is on the 22nd degree of Aries for this lunar eclipse. Now, what do I like and what do I dislike about Chiron being on the degree of to kill and be killed retrograde? First of all, Chiron, it's the wounded healer. Chiron has already been on the 22nd degree. Okay? You want to think back to where have you been when Chiron been direct on the 22nd degree? That was around the period of the solar eclipse in April that we had. Now it's retrograde. We're going over these themes again. So, for example, if I was beginning to tend to political assassination, then now I know that this is all to do with expendable children and that my leaders already survived these death camps and so on and so forth. And Boko Haram is not just in Africa, it is in Brussels and The Hague and so on and so forth. Basel, Geneva, Singapore. And now when Chiron is retrograde, the themes are coming up. And the theme of democide is coming up, but also genocide. Okay. Mars is in the sign of we the people. And the moon is in the sign of something viral. Okay, there's Pisces, all humanity, the flood, refugees, and so on. So the signification that we're going through these events again, and it's eclipse, and there's going to be mandatory army recruitment. So the wound around young soldiers that are of the nation murdering and being murdered comes up again. And the wound of assassination, okay, around that. What I do like about this is Karen is the wounded healer, so there's going to be a healing teaching around that. There's going to be healing of the wound of assassination, democide, genocide, relationship between mothers and sons, mother and so on, and all these things. And also wounds around nourishment, okay? And anything that the moon and the Mars represent for you, okay? So there's going to be another touch on the wound that is ecliptic, and it's going to stir it up very, very strongly, but it's also going to be kind of like a healing that happens around this. For example, if I said also a murder of the souls cost more lives, another thing that I ran into is in 2005 in India. A serial rapist was killed, murdered by 200 women in the court in front of the judge. Okay, in retrospective, they should have killed the judge as well. Structurally, you know, snuff filled what I said, and okay, they have to honor the court system. They would have to kill the judge, but this is kind of like, hey, that there was this case with exposure. There was this case that, hey, when we the people took our power back, that was bad and me too. And there's the notion that this is the spirit of the times. Okay, Uranus is in Venus sign, Lilith and Ketu as well in Venus sign. So we are purging the old juristic system that has been mistreating the Lilith figure. Because it's, again, if we had had respect for the Lilith archetype all across the board in juristic system, I would say we might be purging that. But because it's never been there, okay, it's never been there. Well, the only thing that it has been there is where fathers may get more accessibility to justice in front of the court system, where it's been biased against fathers. It's like if you're not a psychopath, it would be very difficult to get justice. So that's where we might have a purge. Okay, that fathers would be more considered in the court system. We do have, however, suddenly teachings. I ran into teachings of lawyers that teach people how to get justice, both for men and for women, with people that they call a narcissistic abuse. Okay, I know this term is outdated, and but for like dealing with the effects of abuse. And showing that in court and winning a case in court or getting divorce in court, that has been something that has been growing, that has been changing. Okay, so we might be purging certain old standards that we have in favor of new ones, and that is likely to be, yes, supportive of Lilith in most cases. The point is justice. Okay, so where it was not just, we're going to balance the system again. So if your father is not psychopathic and you just, the default was that you don't get to see the children, this might change. Or the default was that you have to depend on the mercy of your wife, this might change. If she's genuinely being abusive, then you might have more power in the face of court to sue, to get justice, to get custody, even full custody. If you're the woman and it happens, and you never got to show your standpoint because you were presented as crazy and incapable and incompetent, and the show would anyway be taking a trade basically, then you might get more chances or accessibility to win in the court system. Okay, that's kind of like on a personal level for people. So this is where I see this coming, okay, lunar eclipse and the Lilith eclipse. And the Chiron 22 is again around the sovereignty when you seek, let's say, shelter, especially if you're a mother, or the sovereignty when you seek shelter, the sovereignty when you seek housing. Okay, if people were thinking about the people that afraid the safety housing as well, intrusion. Okay, Mars is also defense. You think about the Mars in a chart. Let's say you're a woman. This is your chart. Mars is not just the other. Mars is also you, even if you're not ascendant, just ruled by Mars. So when you act in the world, you assert your boundaries. That's your Mars. Okay, I got a killer Mars. I got a 22 retrograde Mars in Scorpio natally. So, which gets into a Cancer Mars opposing Uranus in the Navamsha. Not not one to mess with. It's kind of like it's began not one to mess with, and it matures into internationally, globally, in all humanity level of not one to mess with. So to the point that I don't even have it just happened. So I guess I'm not one to piece off. So that is that is your Mars. It's not about gender so much. It's just about, okay, Mars here enforces who they are, and Mars can both like have really stupid fights with your mother, Mars in Cancer, okay, but here there is a survivalistic wound around these, okay. So you want to think about the role of, like, before you fight your mother, think about the role of housing in that fight, okay, before really. And think about the fact that that womb had to be your house for 9 months. And what did that womb, what did the mother go through toward the pregnant, toward, that's really important, okay? Because healing parental wounds is not easy, and everybody has them. But moon is also housing, so that is something that gives you a point, okay, the ability to assert yourself when it comes to housing and so safety in your house, okay. Wound around sovereignty, okay, the fear that you will be killed because of who you are, whether it's refugees cases or LGBTQ cases, or just kind of like who you are. Okay, people that you have direct confrontations just because you are, and puts you in a life in that confrontation with someone. Okay, hopefully not your parent, but that can be the state, that can be the people. Mars Cancer can definitely be can be a little bit of civil war, because Mars is with the people, because Cancer is with the people and Mars is division and conflict. So again, okay, the fact that you are who you are, even if who you are is kind of like, hey, I don't take sides, I'm not a politics person, like that's fine, I just need to be free and sovereign and say forever I am. And there's like, that's exactly what you can't be, because you're sitting on the fence between wearing a kippah or hugging Arabs. Like, I'm not hugging Arabs, I'm not wearing a kippah, what do you want? For you to pick a side, just don't play that game. Okay, but WHO said you have to. So that's kind of big annoying. But again, it's been there before. It's already it already came up we're just doing it again. Um, and there is an eclipse related. So my prediction is, if nobody died when Chiron was direct, there's no reason for them to die when Chiron is retrograde, unless they were an offender. And if Chiron's, and then Chiron is going to go direct again. Okay. So again, if nobody died when Chiron was direct, there's no reason for them to croak when, or get murdered, or murder even when Chiron is retrograde. We're touching on that wound. Um, that being said, it's not that people don't die or get murdered. Okay, it's just kind of, we're touching on the wound of assassination, more so than committing one. Not necessarily, not in all cases, but let's just think of the retrograde as that case that happened when Chiron was direct, coming up again. So we might be talking about the ears of some orange Jesus leader. Okay, that might come up, and then when Chiron is direct again, again, if there's, this is where the wound is healed. Okay, this is where we've touched on that. Then we have the one final touch, and then you respond the way you need to respond. It's kind of like the power of 3 is also based on the retrograde motion. We have the direct motion, just like, hey, something happened, I didn't know how to respond. Hey, I rethink about how to respond. Hey, I'm confronted with the situation, so this time I respond well and I heal the Chiron wound, depending on the aspect, depending on this. And now, if that was an offender that needed to die, they get murdered. Okay? So that is also important to understand. Aries is the sign of sovereignty. It's the sign of something new. And Mars is the planet of justice, also the planet of war. But it's basically not about, with Chiron, it's not so much the reckless murder. It's more like, unless that was the initial wound, but then we might be avoiding that impulse, or just getting hold of that impulse. But this is basically about just being who you are. Aries is doing you, very literally. Okay, Mars sign, doing you. So if there was a fear about being assassinated because you're doing you, that fear is going to be tackled, pertaining to kill and be killed. Okay, unless you discover that you are, a murderer, and it's part of your identity. I don't know. Like, I don't know. But other than that, this is my prediction for the 22 Chiron. Is that a lot of these wounds that have already been touched are being healed, and it doesn't trigger you as much. Okay, you kind of like stop, recall the teachings, because Aries is also a sign of intelligence, and assert your boundaries and remind them you want to be dead. Because when Chiron is direct, it's really, you are getting your last chances now to stop that yourself. And so that is, and again, especially if you're trying to bring, like if somebody's doing terror, the conjoining of Cancer and Aries can be somebody trying to do terror to make someone, to murder someone, to make it look like it's not murder, okay, some stuff like that. Then if they're using kind of like stuff with cancers for fertility, nourishment, stuff like that, then very likely what's going to happen is that that person get murdered the same way that they try to kill. It's just like when you settle in and center, the people that have been playing it out of like bad intention, they always have to work 10 times harder than the people who stand in their conviction and really come from a place that is just live and let live. Like your voice is going to be heard, your voice is going to be felt. That being said, when you don't come with your intention, the telos is that your intention is going to be exposed, and that can make it very, very challenging for somebody to not carry that telos, okay? And the opponent might not even understand understand why they need to write on Facebook and onto their diary, why they need to expose this name on YouTube, okay? Why they need to do this, or why they need to do that. Mars is also name, so naming the offender. Okay, so again, if your intention is not pure, even the person who exposed it, it's the Gegen over the opponent, is not understanding of why they behave like this. I've been there. Okay? Yeah, I've been there. Okay? I've been that Gegen Uber. I tell you, we don't get why. I don't get why do I have to do that? I don't know, but if I don't do it, I feel sick. And after I do it, I'm like, and I even feel that the person who was the offender, they feel a relief when the name's being told. It's kind of like, okay, they held on to this tension of time, the lies and the hidden, the da 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 da. It's like, I say the name. It's done. It's out. So this is where it's kind of like the purge is happening, and that's another touch on that Chiron 22. And it's very hopeful that by the time Chiron is direct, that's been dealt with, because otherwise, this is the 22 Chiron. Okay, this is that's, and this is an eclipse where, you know, we don't come here to play, we come here to purge the entire cycle of Pluto Capricorn. Okay? And Pluto rules psychology, hidden wealth, power politics, anything taboo, nuclear energy, rejuvenation of skin, cells of the skin, mold, compost and mold. Okay, all that crap. Crap, it rules crap. Excretion. And so, but the telos is towards authenticity. So we can compost, disintegrate, and then what grows on this compost? The forest. Or because you don't want to be composted with your bad patterns, Pluto is calling, and it's going to be different variants of challenge to different people. I'm in my Pluto square, so it's a bit of a crisis where I had to say the name of someone who threatened my life. Okay. I had to say it 3 times. Okay. And in a way that was hidden, okay, that was occultistic and so on. I was like, okay, that name came out when Pluto was going on the 0 degree again, with Chiron on the 22. And I think Mars ingressed Cancer at the time, at the day. So that was like, okay, that name, Mars name, had to be said. And then Chiron goes direct again. If you've been unreasonable, and by unreasonable, I mean unjust. The reasoning with Aries, this is the Kantian world here, okay? Aries is the Kantian world. If you've been unreasonable, for example, if you're doing not art of war, but perpetual war, you're being unreasonable. If you're going against the sovereignty, you're being unreasonable, okay? It's that type of reason. It's Aries reason. We're being unreasonable. We're moving towards reason. This is the type of Aries reason, this type of sovereignty reason. What supports my sovereignty? All of that needs to be done yesterday. There's no, Aries ain't got time for that, okay? If I need, okay, whatever I need, and just Mars is real estate. Mars Cancer is a house. You feel in safety in a house, in safe housing, okay? You can play all night long with Capricorn, with Pisces, the word is that it is, or even in Scorpio. It's the nature of people that it is. Aries doesn't have that. Aries is the head of the baby coming out. What happens when that baby is not fed? I'm going to put my phone a little bit far. It's waging war. And to you, it might be the most unreasonable thing. Who is going to give you a piece of land without the ability to worry? The baby doesn't care. It's wah! And you try to reason with it. It doesn't have time for your reasoning. Because this is Aries and that needs to be done yesterday. Okay, we are moving towards Kantian reasoning at this time. If you're not in alignment with this, if you carry that Scorpio reasoning, okay, if you haven't purged it by the time that Ketu was in Scorpio, don't try to reason scorpionically with Aries. It's Mars, but don't try to reason scorpionically with Aries. It's my nature. Then you go extinct. Okay? It's your nature, you go extinct. But this is the real world. You gotta work hard. Then we'll form a death camp for you. That's what Hitler did. He made art. Arbeiter macht frei. He was an artist, mind you. He couldn't be an officer. You say you have to work hard. Go. No place for the weak, for the disabled, for the not purely Irish, for the not this, for the not inbred Ashkenazi. No place for this person in this academia, in this art, in this. Oh, this style is out of time. Go. Arbeiter macht frei. Die Gedanken sind frei. There's plenty of place for you to work in camps. This is Aries reasoning. You try to reason Capricorn with it, you go kaput. You try to reason Scorpio, it is my nature to do this to you. You go kaput. What other weird reasonings? You try to go, oh my God, don't try to go Pisces with Aries. Don't give them that karma is a thing in your past life you did, but in this life you're dead. That's my correction. In this life I kill you and I reset it for the entire planet Earth to go reset it with the let's think logically, let's live and let live. You have to kill, you have to kill, just do what you have to do. But all this ritual sacrifice of humanity, that kind of stuff, just off with it. Kind of like a bomb, one go, everybody dead. Poof. Solved, problem solved. It's a bit nuclear. Aries also is immediate action. It's not going to take you through the scorpionic. Okay, it's not going to teach you a story about yourself. That doesn't have the time for that. So, but then Aries can also be impulsive and so on and so forth. So that is another thing to remember on the Aries eclipse because Mars is in Cancer. And Cancer is housing, caregiving, with the people, the nation, okay? Whatever the Aries reasoning, it thinks that everybody, if everybody were like this, it was the best. Now, that's a question if Aries is ableist or not. If they're ableist, they can get killed, I guess. But if they are not ableist, then they have better chance at getting this. So again, don't try to reason with Aries outside of Aries reasoning. It doesn't have that. It appreciates your different opinion, but if your different opinion pertains to their body, you're dead. Okay? That's what it is. So the Chiron wound tends to the ability of a person to assert themselves where they fear they might be life threatened. Okay, they're going to do it anyway. That's Aries. Okay, that happened. And again, I warn you, Mars is real estate, fiscal moves, Cancer is food, and housing, and we're heading towards two big giant financial crises. Aries doesn't care. It doesn't care if the coin is up or down or digital or supernatural or golden or it doesn't care. I need housing. I need to be safe in my house. This is a world war. Doesn't matter. I need you made this war. I need housing. I need to be safe in my house. I need food. That need to be done yesterday. I have a right to protect myself. Okay, if you want to see the people that got like homeless, catching a spot in the street with a good view. Okay, going colonialist about it. I have a right to protect it. They're gonna find out with what. It's gonna be very fascinating. Mars. They might throw chili at you. I don't know. And they're right. Look at this Mars, it's not doing anything. And it's ruled by a moon in Pisces. And the moon in Pisces, in the last phase of Pisces, this is a site of completion. This is a site of where, yeah, I think it's the card in the tarot where you have kind of like the wedding. Okay. And this is where you've gotten to your destination. It's the end of the journey. And you know how Shakespeare ended all his comedies with a wedding, okay? So this is scary. You got to the wedding. It's a fated wedding with Mars in Cancer. So Mars is very likely to do what it's supposed to do. Again, if people are afraid to be killed in some way or whatnot, they get over it. They get over it, okay? But you gotta reason Kantian. You gotta reason Kantian because if you reason with something that's not Rahu right now, you're not in the correct time to do that, and you might get into the disillusionment of Neptune. At least know that you're dealing with a person as Kantian, okay? It's like this naive person that doesn't see, you're dealing with a baby, an infant. Okay, when an infant cries, it's crying because it knows that food is coming. If something's wrong, the parent's supposed to tend to that. Okay? If the parent doesn't tend to that, which could be a Chiron wound here of survival, and the infant has to care for itself, don't come for your taxes. Okay, like don't come for that, Aries. Don't carry like if that Aries went to, I don't know, psychotherapy, because it's another Cancer theme and a Pluto theme, and the psychotherapists try to harvest their energy like perpetual trauma. Okay? Don't come for that, Aries, and don't tell them go to therapy. You might end up being their hospital, which means you're gonna pile bodies upon bodies. Uranus and I'll go. And they're going to build in the forest upon which they'll build in the nervous supportive system, the nervous system supportive housing. Why? Because you reasoned them with something that's not. So like, how is this giving this baby the food, the attention? And I don't mean drama. I mean the supportive attention. the ability to be self-sustainable, okay? Not by Saturn in it, but by just allowing it. The Aries will be Aries, just allowing it to be. And definitely don't talk to them about choices. If you've deprived the Aries, like the Aries knows about sovereign choice more than you ever will. Okay? Aries is the I am. I am safe. I am free. I am sovereign. If you cross this border of the I am and you try to change of one of these constituents, you are dead. Simple logic. So important to remember before Neptune goes Aries, before Saturn goes Aries, because right now this star is preparing us to think Aries, do Aries. That's one of the that's one of the last eclipses, one of the last big events in Aries will have, except for maybe the Chiron Aries conjunction, Aries in Aries conjunction that we have before we go full Neptune Saturn 0 degree Aries conjunction, which is going to be big because Neptune is something foggy, Aries is sovereignty, and Saturn is reality check, but also ending in death. So, and taxation and papers. Okay, trying to put Saturn in Aries is something that's very funny. Okay. And again, you're really gonna have to reason Aries, and you're gonna have Neptune time to learn this. Very, very simple. Okay, the I am sovereign, free, safe, to and from, live and let live. Very simple Kantian logic. Okay. And then it's going to be receiving of what he will pass through it. Last eclipse before Chiron goes direct on the 22, which I think will happen around April. And again, that will conjoin the Mars ingress into Leo and opposing Pluto. So for final time. It is the spirit of the times. Okay, and Mars opposing Pluto is direct confrontation that we are building up on. And these eclipses are just preparing us to build to this Mars opposed Pluto. This time with Pluto not being in Capricorn, but already being in the sign of We the People. So this is where the direct confrontation is not with anything that is necessarily the plutocracy, even the patriarchy, or like all of that shit. It's the power of science, the power of the people, the power of decentralized wealth. Okay, Robobank, for example, you know that Robobank is Dutch Rosebud, is a cooperative, is a banking cooperative. Okay, I cannot stress how important it is to begin to look into that in the relation of satanic ritual abuse. This is a rabbit hole. This is a rabbit hole, okay? And so one thing I don't want you to do is to idealize life in a kibbutz. or a commune. There's something that I really don't want you to spend your next 20 years doing. A lot of people will go there thinking there's something idyllic there. This is not Neptune and Aquarius, okay? Don't do that shit. And the Mars opposing Pluto is going to be after these eclipses. Those set of eclipses are just preparing us for this Mars square opposing Pluto transit. So that we've seen what we need to see, we've purged what we need to purge. The Mars opposition Pluto will already be at Pluto Aquarius. So remember 19th of November. I think all the snuff-based trust calls, let's say, are having a tower moment, and the Vatican, okay, it's just the same old, okay, which is just Luciferian Church and the Vatican is the same. What you call Zionist in the Vatican is the same. What Satanic Muslim Brotherhood, okay, the Mossad with the Kufias, okay, it's the same. The Free Palestine, for those who didn't get it. Africa is involved with NATO and is involved with... Okay, wow, this is so important. It's 2 hours, 41 minutes, and I'm like, oh my God, this is such an important point, because it is. Africa is a member of NATO. Africa is involved with NATO. That means that this eclipse, the lunar eclipse, is going to affect Europe by the power of NATO, is already affecting Africa. And when I say Europe, you can't run away to Finland or Sweden or Norway. They are members of NATO. Okay? There's no splendid isolation there. So, and because of Putin. Yes, of course. There's a McDonald's branch in the Kremlin. Need I say more? So do not be surprised if, even though the eclipse is affecting Europe, just by the power of NATO, you will suddenly see happenings in Africa, even though the solar eclipses that affect Northern Africa will not happen before 2027. So be prepared, because we are being marketed. Africa chose China over US. They're in NATO. They're building A-bombs. That's the defluoridization of the water that you see. All these funds of Africa, we are chilling 7 million. I don't know, probably 10. I don't know how many millions in Congo. Brutally murdered. Yeah, but Congo is just one country in Africa. There's Eritrea, there's Ethiopia, Sudan. Like in Europe, when something happens, like when something happened in Ukraine, like all Europe was like feet on, because we're sending money. It's like, this is Europe. We get that. Okay? We can't go, Africa is a country in China when Congo and Ethiopia, and so it's like, this is Africa, okay? And it's NATO-ifying, and it's World War III-ifying. So that's something, if you're listening, if you are African, if you're living in Africa, if you have family in Africa, please, all the things that were relevant to anybody, not just Jews, anybody in Europe around the 2 world wars is relevant to you today. So that is something that, and it's not fear mongering. It's like, just know that. It's not always something you can do about that, but it's like, no, if there is something you can do, then that would be the time to tend to that. Yeah, so that was that point about Africa. which for the sake of the happening is entire Africa. Um, and what does that mean about the solar eclipses of 2027? Well, if they are going to do 2030 in Africa, you understand how this is done and you understand what that means and what that entails. And North Africa is on the line of that map, and these people are building by eclipses, and that is something we all want to understand, both the people who think like where to move to, where to relocate, and the local communities and countries and tribes. Okay, please do not ignore this message. If you know people there, okay, if you're European, I think you don't need a wake-up call. It's like it's already been there. But if you're African, I think that this is where it's going to be the most difficult for you, because you've been really pumped that we are getting out of colonialism mindset. We are becoming sovereign. We're showing the world the face of true Africa, the richness of culture, the this, the that. It's all these things that I see for this Africa marketing. And I think there's a grand disillusionment waiting in the corner that the common person is not, okay, is not being told. I know that people communicate with their ancestors, so that's more prevalent. So that's kind of a point for hope, because you probably already know that. But the people that are going, and I heard African that are going like, yeah, we're not like with, so and so, and I don't think it's going to happen with Africa. It's like, no, that's a Jewish family in Bergen-Belsen in 1938. Okay, they said, don't. So, so that is something that I really, really want you to just to understand. Okay, that it's not, and it's not fear mongering, and it's not this, and it's not that. It's just reality, and you need to adapt to reality and then not ignore the facts. If there's something you can do is begin to tend to a road opening, then that would be the time to do so. Yes, if you're asking me like where to, I don't know, because it's really, it's the world. It's the world. It is those times, and then the fact that we're building on colonies in other planets is not adding to this procedure. And so one approach for people that have accurate birth data is to approach astrocartographers. So I want to, but there is also important thing to know that there is a layering happening with astrocartography. So moving can alleviate some things and add other issues, but it doesn't delete your natal chart. Okay, moving does not delete your natal chart. So if it's something like a 22 thing, then assisting people who are in risk of assassination can be useful to you as charity, and turning to bringing this energy onto something, whether it's a story or something like that, is in favor of humanity. That is another thing that can assist. I'm not saying move it. Okay, other types of remediation. Okay, if it's, let's say, Chiron on 22 now of Aries, then it's on Andromeda constellation, which you can call on for reconciliation. You have to see where the 22 planet is, what fixed stars are there. Al-Qaid can be good. If something's connected to being seen, then invisible moon can be good. Okay, new moon talismans. It just really depends on the chart. And the notion that, life is life and so on. But it's important to remember, okay, that the natal chart is still playing out even when we change location. That is being said, a lot of other things are accentuated upon change of locations. You want to take into account parents, and you want to take astrocartographer that works with parents. And takes a look at your relocated chart. Your relocated chart is another layer of signification, and it's an important one. Let's say you have a 22 planet, but it's not the ruler of your ascendant. It doesn't touch on the ruler of your ascendant, but you relocate to a country where it's now conjuncting your ascendant. Good morning. Now you are that way, okay? Now you are the to kill and be killed. So this is also, okay, kind of important to keep in mind, okay, that other layering. So the relocated chart is not something I would ignore if this is the reason you're considering a move. I don't do astrocartography readings. I was asked about this. This is life and death, like I don't. Okay. I don't consider it, and take into account the fact that we mostly don't have your rectificated chart completely. That makes it even more, yes, challenging. So, yeah, I think this is pretty much it. I'll see you in another episode. Bye-bye.